So, our today's lesson is the poem 3 from Flamingo. Name of the poem is Keeping Quiet, and the poet is Pablo Neruda. Let us know something about the poet. Pablo Neruda was his pen name and later his legal name. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 1971. The poem was originally written in Spanish but later translated to English. Its main thrust was the significance of mindfulness, introspection, and retrospection, as these lead to attention, unity, and brotherhood. Pablo Neruda is the modern poet who has seen both the world wars and crisis in civilization, seen people rushing towards his goal, most of the cases for power fight, and without realizing, harming himself and his communities. So basically, through this poem, Neruda discusses the need of maintaining peace and silence. He stresses upon being quiet and harmless to the human beings, animals, and environment. And in order to bring peace and harmony, we must stop and introspect ourselves. Isn't it relevant today again? The outbreak of COVID 19 had forced us to keep a respectful distance from others. This isolation, self imposed or medically mandated, can be taken as an ideal opportunity to ponder on our journey so far and the future path. As we are passing through a tough phase, let's turn this challenge into an opportunity and try to understand what nature has been telling us through this crisis. In this poem, the poet talks about the necessity of quiet introspection and creating a feeling of mutual understanding among human beings. Like a true communist, he reflected his belief of oneness and unity, his belief of universal brotherhood. To analyze and understand this poem better, I have distributed the poem into 6 segments. Number 1 is introduction. Number 2 is creating an exotic moment. Number 3, no harm to anyone. Number 4, no words of any kind. Number 5, stillness, no total inactivity. And number 6, earth remains alive. You will note soon that the question and the most important questions and explanation revolve around these 6 segments. Let's read the poem. This part I named as introduction. And now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. First, underline, count to 12 and all keep still. Move our arms. So let's discuss on the first phrase, count to 12. Have you ever heard anyone giving you a time range counting 12? A big no, right? Always people call, I'm counting 3, 5, 10, 20, 100, but never 12. Then why is the poet here wish to count 12? 12 here symbolizes a measure of time, but talks mainly about oneness and new beginning. Try to imagine the clock when it struck 12, both of its hands are together, which signifies oneness. On the other hand, after 12, the new day, the new month starts. So 12 signifies even a new beginning. You can study more about the significance of 12 even after. The second phrase, all keep still. So when all keep still without doing anything, all stand as one, all turn united. And as they don't talk in any language, you even can't discriminate based on language. You can't even discriminate based on race. Yes, language is one of the trademark of racism. So people can only speak through their hearts and understand each other, which would lead to a mass movement for the first time on the face on the earth. Going to the next, move our arms. For a while, none will move their arms either to signal or to fight or argue with each other. Here, arms is a pun. It means both limb and weapon. So note that both way, if none move their arms too much, it will surely bring peace. Let's continue reading. This is the part I named as creating an exotic moment. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Here we need to focus on two phrases. One is an exotic moment, another is a sudden strangeness. Underline and try to understand this. So, why is this an exotic moment? It is an exotic moment because maybe keeping quiet invokes a kind of spiritual union with the universal spirit. It is an exotic moment because the silence of the peace would form the common link between all of us, bringing us all together. It is an exotic moment because it would be a moment of peace. It is an exotic moment because universal love and brotherhood would prevail. It is an exotic moment because none will move their arms or weapons. It is an exotic moment because the silence will guide us towards world peace. Or this momentarily peace will lead all of us to a world peace. Why? Because by taking this break, by introspecting ourselves, we will understand our mistake and will not repeat it again. Next one is the sudden strangeness. It will be a strange because it has never happened before. It will be strange because everyone will be calm and quiet, united with each other in a strange atmosphere. It will be strange because no person would be harming any other living being, either for food or to earn his livelihood. Let's back to reading. This part is named as No Harm to Anyone. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hot hands. Now underline fishermen in the cold sea, not harm whales, man gathering salt, and hot hands. You must note the use of symbolism in this stanza. Fishermen represent proficient hunters, rulers, or those who's in power. The whales represent the oppressed or the ruled class of the human beings, those who have been exploited all the time. And the mankind has been personified as a salt gatherer in the poem. So the salt gatherer means the fortune seeker, the power hungry people, or the ruler of the world. So basically, in this stanza, we see the cry of the oppressed. The poet means to say that if people would stop hurting, dominating, or exploiting one another in an attempt to understand themselves, will be able to see what is the harm they have done to themselves. Haven't you found a cut or a bruise on your body sometime when you are sitting alone? When that happened, you don't know because at that point you were in a hurry or too busy, and you note that because now you take a break. Think of a situation when you can't even hear yourself while speaking to your friend in a crowd, but can hear the whisper when away from the hustle and bustle. Think of today, during this global pandemic, when the whole world is locked down, pollution rate reduced abruptly, water in Venice Canal goes crystal clear, dolphins are back, swans are back, animals have started coming back to their encroached land. We can see and realize very easily what is the harm we have done to this planet. The same damage happened during the great wars, and the poet pleaded us to take a break, to rejuvenate, to start a new beginning. The poet is trying to tell us that the whole world, the whole of humankind is in a mad rush to finish off the existence and achieve whatever goals they set. People are so occupied that they never take the time to look into themselves and understand themselves. So, in an exotic moment of peace, only the people look into themselves and identify their follies and rectifies them to be a better human being. Let's continue with the fifth stanza reading, which I have named as No Wars of Any Kind. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivor, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. Now underline green wars, victories with no survivor, put on clean clothes with their brothers in the shade doing nothing, and in the shade. What are the different words mentioned in this line? Green wars, wars with gas, and wars with fire. Please note, all the word involves environment or the nature. All wars originate from the lack of self understanding and the understanding that all individuals are equal, which is why the poet stresses on introspection. The poet basically requests everyone to stop those killing activities which are damaging the environment. Today, all the human beings are making money by damaging the environment with their activities such as mining, deforestation, letting the chemical waste into the rivers, the plastic disposal, and blah, blah, blah. Have a look with the underlying words and phrases. The green wars. People who exploit the green wealth of nature by deforestation or mining or fishing in the deep seas, and the soldiers who use weapons to kill the fellow human beings need some time to introspect into the consequences of their action. They are merely doing their job or following orders. We have to stop them too. The next one, victories with no survivor. It's a paradox. Two contradictory words, victory and no survivor. People who win the war claims to possess the victory. But is that really so? Have they not lost tremendous life in this process? Then how can they claim to have the victory? Think of the situation during the World War when there was this devastating Hiroshima and Nagasaki. People claim that they have won the battle. Didn't they see the loss of wealth, loss of property, loss of human being, loss of civilization, loss of humanity? How can they claim that they have won? Put on clean clothes. He wants them to put on new clothes, which is to adopt a new approach towards life and to realize that killing so many people is not a victory. The poet says that quiet introspection will make us comprehend the destructive nature of wars. Man would shed his blood-soiled clothes and put on clean clothes, which means he could clean his soul, heart, and mind and will forget the anger, hatred, discrimination. Going to the next one, with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. There can be two interpretations drawn out from the few lines of this paragraph. One interpretation expands that people responsible for wars, such as politicians, scientists, triggers the war, and later stay in the shade walking hand in hand with the rivals as brother, while thousands of lives are lost in the battle. Another explanation that people are never happy to go to war. They realize the absurdity of victory from war. As a result of this reflection, people can be friendly as brothers and walk about in the shade doing no violence. The final one, in the shade. It is a metaphor. Here, the shade is used to show as the shade protects us from the harsh sun, we will protect and shelter each other as brother. So basically, the poet wants all of us to be united as one. Consider our enemy to be as our brother. He's promoting brotherhood, peace, and unity as the true communist once again. Back to reading. And I have named this stanza as Stillness, Not Total Inactivity. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a silence, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Underline should not be confused with total inactivity, no truck with death. This sadness of never understanding ourselves, threatening ourselves with death. Two question comes. What is it that should not be confused with total inactivity? Remember, it is the moment of silence and stillness. So this peaceful moment should not be confused with total inactivity or death. Death of mind, death of people, death of anything. So basically, the poet does not want to have any deal with any kind of death. Going to the underlined phrase and words. Should not be confused with total inactivity. The poet doesn't advocate total inactivity and death. He clarifies this in his poem that he wants all the people to just stop for a while in order to analyze their activities and their consequences. He wants to say that life is a continuous process, and so it's all about being on the move. Life is about sprouting out of seemingly dead and surrounding. Life is about night and day, stop and walk. It is not a state of inactivity, but rather a continued action at a slow pace. No truck with death. It is euphemism. So, it is a softer way of expressing intolerance of death and killer forces. It is a strong anti war statement. By keeping quiet, the poet doesn't want us to be like death. We are very much alive on that moment, and earth can prove we are not dead but alive. The sadness of never understanding ourselves. The sadness is a result of our own action and deeds. The sadness of isolation, which is made by the man himself. The sadness is that man turned self centered. The sadness is that man has forgotten to care one another. As we have no time to introspect, we are threatening ourselves with death. Back to reading the final part, which I have named as Earth Remains Alive. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I will count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. Please underline, perhaps the earth can teach us. So the question comes, what can earth teach us? The earth can teach us how to live on it. It can teach us when everything seems to be dead, earth remains alive. Basically, this stanza is empathetic towards human being, persuading them to take a lesson from nature. So let's check the example. Example 1. During the winter, I'm talking about the winter in the cold countries, the earth is white, and that white winter, which is symbolic to death. But that white, lifeless winter does not last long. Spring comes with new hope and new life. Example 2. Despite all natural disaster and calamities, the earth continues with its journey. After a certain period of time, the cycle of reconstruction continues. The earth rejuvenates itself with life and hope. Apparently, example 3, apparently the seed seems lifeless, but it brings new life, new hope with time. So, we should not be disappointed while keeping quiet, but remember the lesson given by the earth. Why is the narrator willing to count up to 12 again? Because he's preparing to go, keeping others quiet on a train of thought. Now that he has passed on the message, his work is done, and he quietly leaves that scene. He wishes now others to carry on the message given by him. So, what are the messages? The messages is given that we should take a break to introspect, to understand ourselves. We should take a break to rejuvenate. We should take a break to promote unity and oneness. I'm sure by this time we all have noted that the poem does not follow any rhyme scheme. Yes, the poem is written in free verse. So, what are the poetic devices? Number one, symbolism. Number two, metaphor. Number three, simile. Number four, transferred epithet. Number five, repetition. Number six, paradox. Number seven, euphemism. Number eight, personification. Number nine, alliteration. Number 10, enjambment. Number 11, anaphora. And number 12, assonance. Let's get some details. Symbolism. Count to 12. Symbolizes a measure of time but talks about oneness and new beginning. Fishermen in the cold sea, heart hands, showing how man is ruthlessly destroying nature and harming other species in cold blood for his selfish need and greed. Or how the ruling class is exploiting the ruled. Man for mankind, brothers, symbol of mankind, metaphor. Put on clean clothes. Man should shed his blood soiled clothes and put on the clean clothes. That means he could clean his heart and soul and forget the hatred and anger. In shade, just as shade protects us from the harsh sun, we will protect and shelter each other as brother, thus live in peace and harmony. Simile, art can teach us as when everything, just as earth in its sleeping mode appears to be dead on surface but is actually dormant and carefully preserving the seeds of life, human beings too need to keep still and quiet to rejuvenate with time. Transfer epithet, code C, repetition, let's. Repetition to create bond with the reader and stresses point. Paradox, victory with no survivor, two contradictory words, victory and no survivor. Euphemism, no truck with death, is in a softer way of expression, the intolerance of death and the killer forces. It is a strong anti-war statement. Personification, earth can teach us on everything. So earth is personified as teacher. Alliteration, too many. We will, we would, sudden strangeness, his hard hands, wars with, clean clothes. We were so single minded. Enjambment, and for once could perhaps a huge silence threatening ourselves with death. Anaphora, two consecutive lines starting with the words let's. Let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second. Assonance, use of the vowel sounds O and E. Now we will count to 12, not move our arms so much. Victory with no survivor would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers. Before I end my lecture, remember, you can get two kinds of questions from the poem. Number one, the very short question or the extract based question, and number two, the short question. Extract questions you should answer within 10 to 15 words. These very short questions you can even answer with one single word if possible, and try to be very precise or to the point. Don't write long answer unnecessarily to waste your time and energy. The short question means You need to write them within 30 to 40 words. Focus more on extract based question, which means name of the poem and the poet, poetic device, important words and phrases. Make sure that you have read the poem or the text again and again. You know the meaning of each word properly. Practice as many extract as you can. What else? A very good luck.